Hey, what's up, guys? Little man with a big opinion here. So, this time of year, I tend to remake this video where I talk about the things that we plan on purchasing with our tax return that are related to prepping. I think I've done a fairly good job talking about, we're a budget prepper. We budget everything. And, we knew the size of our tax return. Thank you, Michael. We have a small child that, makes that number go up significantly. And, we're like every other family. We're both gonna pay a little bit down on some credit cards, and we're gonna finally be adults and get a new bed. And this will be the first bed that's had a comma in it. So, we're hoping this is a good 15 to 25 year investment. Your sleep's important. The bed that we're sleeping on now, I bought in college for $250 off of Amazon. And we've supplemented it a little bit by putting some mattress toppers on it. But it's time to be, more adult-like. We're both, we're both closer to 30 now than we are 20. And so I'd rather start now before, anything terrible starts to happen. But if you're checking in on this kind of stuff and you're watching a lot of my videos, you should probably subscribe to the channel. You should like the video if you enjoy the content, dislike it if you don't, and leave your comments down below. This weekend I had fairly good conversations with people I've never met. I responded to 15, 20 comments, and I hope some of that was enlightening for you. I'm also getting Google News pulled up on this ancient computer. We'll see how long it actually takes to load. That way, I've got some stuff that I might talk about. So, generally speaking, a lot of us get some form of a tax return. Some of us get more than others. If you have, more than one kid, your tax return is probably going to be bigger. Hopefully, depending on how you feel, I kind of like that I have mine set up where I overpay about $75 a month more than I'm supposed to, because that adds about $1,000 to the tax return, and it's kind of like a small savings. I don't see the money, so I'm not tempted to spend it, and I get it in one big chunk that I can, get some prepping related things. The bed, I wouldn't really say it's a huge prepping thing, but one of the prepping things that I am purchasing is I'm getting 2 35-pound plates. If you've seen some of my shorts, I have been consistently working out 3 to 5 times a week for about 90 days now. I'll be the first person to admit I was way faster, way stronger in high school. I kind of peaked in college and had a few years where I was doing, light activity, a couple times a month. Kind of got pretty big, had some health scares, and it's been a roller coaster like this. But consistently going on about 90 days, I'm easily squatting, 135 pounds, 3 to 4 sets of 6 to 8 reps. which for me, I feel pretty good about that because I weigh 125, 130 pounds on average. So I'm moving my body weight. But I've got the 225s, 410s, and 45s. And, getting the 35s, the new goal is now we're slapping the 35s on first, putting the 10s and the 5s on, and eventually, I know my squat has been in the 300 pounds before. I'm taking it very slow because I'm mostly doing this on my own. And so I'm not, pushing weight that I'm going to end up dropping. I don't want to drop it on my hardwood floor. I've got mats underneath me. But we're going a little bit slower with this, and I'm fine with that. The numbers are going up. The number of reps that I can do is increasing. I'm slowly increasing the weight. The 35 pounds, that's adding 70 more pounds. And it's not just squat. I bench, I overhead press, I do rows. I'm not really I don't think I'm, for a while, going to be able to put 35s on either side and curl the bar because that's a pretty substantial amount of weight. But, that's something that I think all of us can get behind is if you sit down and you're honest with yourself, we all probably need to work out more. And so, we did our wilderness survival camp out this weekend. I cut down a bunch of spars and I brought them home with me. And I had to walk them about 700 yards. And there was a few moments where my heart rate got over 130. And, I think the most I was carrying at one point was maybe 50 pounds between two trees. One of them, I know one of them's over 8 foot long. Two of them, because I have an 8-foot bed and they're sticking out of the bed. And one's about 3.5, 4 inches in diameter, and the other one's about 3 inches. So it felt good. Did it all in one go. But if you're planning on bugging out, you're going to want to be able to lift weight. You're going to want to be able to walk distance with that weight. Squat is like the foundation of success there. So that's one of the purchases, is buying two 35-pound plates, and we're going to spend about $85-100 on that. I typically spend about $100-150 on prepping stuff in a month, so I consider that a big purchase. I'm buying the stuff to make my own Berkey water system. I'm just buying their filters, a little bit of hardware, 2 steel pots, and I'm going to set up my own. That's $40-50. And I will show a video of me making it, just in case you want to make your own. That's going in this month. Buying a little bit of ammo, that's something I do every month. I think most of us preppers, most people that own firearms, want to be able to do that every single month. Although I think we'd rather do that every single week. I think we're going to do it this week because we had this past weekend, Saturday night got down to 37. Last night got down to 33. The rest of this week is in the 50s. And I can only really look 10 days out. But we're finally going to be purchasing the rest of our trees. And that is one more pear tree, 2 fig trees, 2 peach trees, and possibly mulberry or apple, but we are kind of limited on space. So, our house will look very, very pretty in 5 to 20 years when they're nice and big and producing fruit. And I would like to get to the point when I was in high school, the house 3 houses down, they had a massive pear tree. 30, 40 foot tree. It produced, several 100 pounds of pears a year. And the old guy that lived there, he picked the ones that he could reach, never got on a ladder. And we asked him, we're like, hey, we see you have this pear tree. We'll pick some for you if we can have some. And he kind of stopped us there and he was like, I eat 5 or 10 of these. The rest of them fall on the ground and rot and turn into fertilizer. If you bring me 20 of them, then y'all can eat as many of these as you want. And, for about a month and a half out of the year, we would just walk into his yard, pick one on our way to school and eat it. And on the way home, pick 4 or 5 of them, go bring him 2 or 3, and then we would eat one after school for about 6 weeks out of the school year. And so it was a nice working relationship that, I would like to be able to, have the fruit growing there, that if a kid's walking down the street, I can say, look, if you can reach it, it's yours. And then I'll, kind of secretly put a little 4-foot ladder out there or something. That way they can reach more of them. They can eat something that we grew. They knew where it came from. And, they'll have a little bit of variety as well. We'll be able to eat fresh fruit as it's ripening, and then we'll be able to go pick it and, freeze dry it, turn it into jams and jellies, or, I've always wanted to make ciders and mead and stuff like that. The one pear tree that we have, it's gotten about 2 foot taller since I planted it 2 years ago. Not producing fruit yet, which we really didn't expect it to. I'm happy it's survived our cold winters because I didn't protect it very well like I should have. But I also got it as a 7-foot tree, knowing it needed to be a little bit more hardy. So, getting another pear tree, 2 figs, 2 peaches, and the possibility of 2 more, that's 7 trees at 20 to 50 a piece. So, a decent amount of money is going to go in there. And they always say, when you're planting trees, the best time to do it was 20 years ago. And the second best time is now. These trees will be in peak food production, when I'm in my 40s. They'll stay in peak production between my 40s and my 60s. And so, in combination of having the fruit trees, plus the garden, plus I'm going to buy the last of the material I need to finish the chicken coop, we're not going to cover 100% of our food needs. I think between chickens, fruit trees at peak production, and a garden, we could probably get kind of close to 50%. We can definitely expand the garden and increase what we're growing and solidly get that at 50%. And if things were really, really terrible, I think we could plant stuff on all of the green that we have available. And if things got terrible enough, we could add. Right now, we can't have goats in the city, but we do have a plan in place to get goats, and we have space for them if those rules went out of place. We've discussed with friends and family, on how food is going to work. And if there's no rules, we could triple the amount of chickens that we're going to have. Get some of their goats and a pig or two over here. We've got the space to handle it. But that's like apocalyptic disaster. For now, we can get the stuff where we can and preserve the food to increase our food stocks and probably be much better than 85-90% of the US anyway. All that being said, we are gonna save enough that we could, I and the wife could quit working for an entire month, and we have a whole month's worth of bills covered. That's something that we've been slowly adding to, and with this tax return, we'll be able to make that happen, and we'll be good to go. So, good things there. I also think I'm going to buy a pound of rifle and pistol powder. That way I 100% have all the stuff that I can make a few hundred rounds if I need to. I've saved my shell casings for years. Not a shortage there. My grandpa graciously purchased most everything else. So I have the bullets and the primers, and I have the stuff to, clean everything and measure it and do all that stuff. So if you want to see me reload 9mm, 223, 25-06, 40, 357, I can get that stuff fully set up, dial in all the measurements, and I can show making some of that stuff. It'll be more for entertainment. I'm not skilled enough in it yet to try to do like a informative video on that. But it'd make me feel a lot better to have the last component to where if push comes to shove, I can replace some of the rounds that we're shooting. And, from that point on, we're going to buy a little bit more camping stuff so that my cousin and my wife can go camping with me. We'll bring our son, and we're talking about camping for part of my spring break. It'll be good to get outdoors, enjoy hiking, fishing, sitting around a campfire, cooking food on a stove, sleeping in a tent, and that's more of a skill thing. But it does cost money to buy the tools to make it enjoyable. And that goes into our prepping stuff. And from that point, we'll continue to, spend a couple $100 a month on prepping stuff, and that's the tax return. So, in the comments, you can say, if you get a tax return, what are you going to put towards prepping? It sounds boring, but paying down debt so that you have the money from those payments that you can then reallocate into other stuff, that's a form of prepping. Just because our government's in debt doesn't mean we need to be in debt too. So, you can just say paying down debt, buying ammo, getting a new firearm, fire starters, first aid stuff, communications, water storage, all of these sort of things. Let me know down below. I'll say it one more time. Subscribe if you enjoy this stuff. Like and dislike based off of what you think about this. But until then, I'll catch you in the next one.